Hello and welcome to the 01 call-in show. I hope that everyone is doing absolutely wonderfully tonight. I'm doing absolutely wonderfully myself. And tonight we have a new setup. We instead of calling in and having and people coming directly into the stream, we now have a mod team working in the background. Thank you very much to Skids the Clown for offering to do that. So if you click on the link at the top of the screen, that will bring you into Skids' room, who will check your audio, give you a rundown of the show setup, take your name or alias if you don't want to use a name, and what your topic is that you want to discuss, and then he'll send you through to the live room when we're ready. So if you have any questions or you have a topic that you want to discuss, please feel free to click that link that's at the top of the chat. Before we get started tonight, I want to shout out to Devoutly Secular TV. It is a new Roku TV channel that me and a few other people are setting up, and we're going to be using it to provide small content creators a new platform for viewership and sponsorship. So, definitely look forward to that coming out. I do have a video just showing what that is going to entail, so I'll play that now. Yeah, so that was the intro video for Devoutly Secular TV. If anyone, we're in the startup stage at the moment, so if anyone would like to, find out more about that, or even, if you're willing, sponsor us and help with the startup costs for that idea, then please feel free to contact either me, Skids the Clown, or West Sturdivant. So getting back into the show, tonight's we're doing the 01 call-in show, and we're going to be taking callers if you want to discuss religion, reasons for believing in God or reasons for not believing in God if you're atheist. If you think you've got some evidence, call in and we can definitely discuss that. Obviously, we don't just keep it to religion. If you want to discuss conspiracy theories, things like that as well, reasons for believing those, we're more than happy to discuss that as well. So let me introduce Scott Williamson, our regular co-host for this show. How are you tonight, Scott?
Man, it's going great. It's Friday night, and I'm letting my hair down, so I'm just feeling it.
Lovely. I'm glad to hear. So we're looking forward to tonight then, and probably getting some more presuppositionals in, but that seems to be what we seem to get.
Seems like that's the popular theist argument, the presuppositional apologetic, which is kind of like an engagement into question begging as far as I'm concerned. I haven't really heard anything that makes it so, all that enticing or convincing to me. There's better arguments, I think, for God, stuff like that. I think personal experience would probably rate up there at the top. Not that it's very convincing to someone from the outside. I mean, personal revelation is hearsay to everyone else,
Yeah.
as exactly. A philosopher. So, but, we can discuss it. We can figure out if it's really all that convincing to someone on the outside. Like my bar is kind of high when it comes to evaluating this kind of stuff, because we're talking about an extraordinary claim, whether you're talking about ghosts or spirits or God or things of that nature. It seems like those are extraordinary claims, and there has to be evidence that meets that claim. And you know, and a lot of people hate it when, you know, people like atheists say that, because it's like it's the same thing that it seems like a lot of atheists say. Where's the evidence? Prove it, man. Blah blah blah. But you know, at the end of the day, that's how most people feel about most things, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I think we do need to discuss a little bit as well about last week, because we had, you know, it was a great conversation that we were having with with the first caller, and then obviously with Christopher as well, who called in. You know, extremely smart guy. But we also had Darth Dawkins join, and as far as presuppositionals go, he seems to be high up there on the list. That, you know, when people are talking about presuppositional arguments, you know, what are our thoughts about what happened last week with Darth Dawkins?
Yeah, to me, I was listening. It was kind of funny just hearing the back and forth, because it seems like Darth Dawkins is playing into that whole rudeness routine where he's got to overtalk you and not give you a chance to, you know, maybe just rephrase your question or try to get clarification. And, you know, he's real popular for just railroading over top of you and just over talking you and being rude and calling people, you know, autistic and, you know, just uncalled for little jabs here and there. It's like we can have a good conversation about anything as long as we keep it respectful. But it seems like if you're not following into his script and you're not, you know, playing by his little, you know, niche, then he's going to start becoming rude and start insulting you and start over talking you and yelling. And it's just so tired. It gets so old after a while to me. Now, a lot of people find this entertaining, and unfortunately, a lot of Christians find it convincing. They really like this argument. And I'm more than happy to discuss the argument and talk about what I see as the flaws on it. But we can do without the rudeness, guys. We don't need to be yelled at and talked to like that. It's just stupid.
Yeah, it's you know, it seems like very defensive as well. I mean, as far as his script goes, because you know he's as you say, he just doesn't let people talk, and you know he's like, well, it's either yes or no, but clearly people are wanting to answer, like, you know, like Chris was trying to do last week, answer with more than just yes or no, because to the other person it wasn't a yes or no, but Darth was like, no, it has to be yes or no. That's how I've written it down, sort of thing. It's, you know, he defines, you know, he defines truth into existence, and that's something that you can't do. You can't just define something to be true and then go, oh, see, it's true.
Yeah, it's a big setup game. It's like setting you up. Like if you say yes, then gotcha. Then I'm going to get you. And the thing about these thought problems, if you want to call them that, with thought problems, the moment that you try to dwindle it down to a yes or no, you're already going about it all wrong. You know,
Yeah.
thought problems are not yes and no type of things. If they were, they wouldn't be thought problems to begin with. And the thing about it is with Christopher, this is somebody who's well versed in, you know, logic and mathematics and things of that nature. And so he's going to treat it with a lot of rigor and a lot of definition and a lot of understanding some basic premises of an argument. You know, what framework of logic are you working in? Are we talking about Boolean logic, classical logic, fuzzy logic, quantum logic? what framework are we working within?
Yeah.
And it seems like someone like Darth Dawkins and most of the Christians are appealing to a sort of classical logical system. And then you're talking about this ultimacy of God being the grounding of all things, which if you put it in terms of, logical terms, as Christopher was, he says, what you're talking about a universal set. And you're trying to say that all sets exist within this ultimate set that it's grounded in called God. Well, there's the Russell paradox, which basically that's not allowed in the Russell paradox. And this is well known. This is like an old paradox, an old logical problem. And Christopher just brought that up. And it's like someone like Darth Dawkins, like he said, like, I'm not talking about mathematics. We're not talking. It's like, this isn't mathematics. We're talking about logic. If you're going to play the classical logic game, then we have to understand, the existing problems with what you're saying. How do you refute those problems? How do you overcome them?
Now, I had a problem when he mentioned, this isn't about mathematics. Now, the problem there is that, mathematics isn't like he's talking about it like it's a separate thing. Mathematics is just another language. Like English, it's just another language that we use to describe things and, and help us understand things. And mathematics is a lot more powerful than English could ever be. I've been doing some, letting Christopher show me some of the mathematical proofing. And it becomes quite clear very quickly that there's a lot more things you can describe and understand by using mathematics. It's a much more robust language than our English. I mean, for instance, let's take, he was showing me some mathematical proofing, which is what he does for work. And he took a simple concept like the rule that we all know for prime numbers and how we work out whether something's a prime number. And he did a mathematical proofing on the board to show me how you actually prove that a prime number's a prime number, and that the rule for prime numbers actually works. And it was 4 whiteboards worth of mathematics, pure mathematics, just to work out that one simple truth.
Wow.
So, it just shows how powerful mathematics can actually be and how much out of his depth Darth Dawkins is when he's trying to discuss logical systems with someone who does mathematical logic on a daily basis.
Yes, he wasn't prepared for that, because it seems to me someone like Darth Dawkins is, he's used to talking to people who are just your everyday people that don't give a lot of thought to logical problems in mathematics and things like that. And he's used to talking to people like that. And so it's very easy to kind of, anytime someone starts to talk about all these logical arguments for why they're right, I would be kind of suspicious of them, because that's exactly what a lot of theologians and politicians do. They try to really swindle you, they try to bamboozle you, and they use your ignorance against you. And it just sounds good at face value. It sounds really good. And if you notice, these people steamroll over you. They try to go real fast with you, so you don't have a chance to really think about it. And to, the uninitiated, that might all sound convincing, and someone like Darth Dawkins may be counting on that. And that's why he's so successful at that, at that argument, I guess. But, if you're dealing with someone like Christopher, who does understand the language of mathematics and the rigor that goes into understanding basic truths about reality, and as you said, or as we see, at the end of the day, even someone like Christopher admits, hey, fundamentally, I don't know. Yeah. Because I can only talk about stuff within the framework that we're discussing it within. So fundamentally, we don't know, because he starts talking about Gödel's theorem and all these other things, systems within hierarchies of systems that all kind of rely on themselves, or that lead to other things, as far as I understand what he's saying, because I really don't understand a lot. But that's kind of the problem,
Yeah, and Darth Dawkins is using, he's using a Boolean logic, a classical Boolean logic sort of system, but he even fails, from what I understand from talking with Christopher, he even fails in that, in
Hmm.
his own logic. Christopher was mentioning to me that he fails straight away because he says that, you know, uh, God is ultimate and God dictates everything,
Right.
which those two things in a Boolean logical system do not fit with each other.
Hmm.
Because if he dictates everything, then he dictates that he's ultimate.
Right. That's the
Which,
Russell paradox. Right.
yeah,
Mm. Yeah. That it's interesting, and most people are not familiar with that. But aside from that, just you can go that deep with it. But even just on the face of it, if you deal with it on a very simple level, he's just engaging in question begging because
yep,
you're sort of he's assuming the thing he's trying to prove in the argument. So how does that work? You can't really. It's not how it
yeah.
works. You have,
Now,
in order to convince somebody, we have to have a common starting point, and we
yeah,
have to build from there. And then you have the problem of, well, why is it the Christian God that's the ground of everything? Why couldn't it be the Hindu God or the Islamic God? It could be any. It could be a naturalistic sort of unknown object that can explain or ground everything. If you wanted to play that game. So it just seems to have so many easy refutations about it.
yeah,
And even Christians, a lot of Christians and Muslims that I talk to don't really like their presuppositional apologetic. In fact, I saw something earlier today, and maybe someone can call in with their opinion on this. But there was a minister I heard earlier yesterday, last night. I was listening to him preach last night, and he was saying his whole point was apologetics is stupid. And his
yeah,
whole thing was apologetics is sort of self-refuting the whole idea of God and faith and things of that nature. For some Christians, all you need is the Bible.
mm,
People get down to it. People believe things don't believe things because of arguments. They believe things because they feel it in their heart. And when they feel things in their heart and they read the Bible or the Quran or whatever, it seems to resonate with what's in their heart. And some people like that believe because they see some sort of unification within themselves. They're like, hey, I feel this way about God. And when I read the Bible, it all sort of makes sense. And so this preacher was actually saying, you don't need any arguments. All you need is that. That's scriptural. That's what Jesus said. He gets people by their heart. You know, Happy is he who believes and has not seen or has not been perceiving the things that the people who were in Jesus' time supposedly saw.
mm,
And so that was the message. So this preacher was arguing that side of it, which I would love someone to come on and actually be honest and talk about those type of things. How they came to believe. Real things. It seems like apologetics and arguments are things that kind of strengthen people's faith that already have that faith to begin with. What do you think?
yeah. I completely agree. A lot of the time it is, they're just trying. See, I always try to think back to when I was religious, and what that was like. And there's always questions, but religion tells you to just bury those questions. But that
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't answer the doubts. That doesn't answer the questions that you have. So then you go to a defensive mechanism where you're trying to prove to
Mm-hmm.
yourself that those questions aren't worth answering, or that the answer that you've been given is the right answer. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel with a lot of theists that I've spoke to that is exactly what they're doing. They are
Yes.
trying to, enforce the dogma, so that they can bury the questions easier.
Yeah, the preacher last night that I saw that I was talking about, he sort of said the same thing that you're saying now. He was saying, look, all you guys that are engaging in debates on the internet and getting on Facebook and trying to attack atheists and people of unbelievers of Christianity, he said, all of that is just a sign that you lack faith. He said, because it seems like you have a weakness and an insecurity, and you feel like you have to have these solid, high-sounding sort of philosophical arguments. And he was saying, our God is not a philosophical God. Our God is the true God, and he doesn't need a philosophical argument to prove him. He's apparent to us. And, while I don't agree with that, of course, it just opens up a really good question for those who do engage in art. Why do you engage in these sort of apologetics? What is the real reason behind that?
Exactly. It's continue on anyway. I'm just sending out a couple of links. In Discord, so I will.
No problem. Yeah, like I'm part of a Facebook debate groups just for the fun of it, and so many Christians their whole idea is to go tear down atheists. They really focus on tearing down atheists out of all people. They don't want to focus on Hindus or Islamic folks. And, there's a lot of atheists too that kind of have an axe to grind, and they go right after Christians specifically, probably because they used to be a Christian. And so I think there's a lot of tribalism on all sides of the spectrum here. And, I'm just very interested in the motivations behind all of that. While I engage in debates, I love it. I think it's fun. And I come right out and I say, I do it because it's like a sport. It's kind of like playing chess. And I've even argued the other side. I still do. Sometimes I argue the God position against atheists. Just because look, to have a philosophical position or have a debate, you don't have to necessarily believe your side of it. You can actually argue any side you want and engage that way. I don't usually do that. I've done that before. But it just lets me know that it kind of sharpens you a little bit. It's just fun. It's fun to practice and get it, kind of understand arguments from both sides and try to steel man the other side. And it's just a fun game for me. Obviously I'm an agnostic. I'm very agnostic about the idea of supernatural gods and stuff like that. But again, I can argue the atheist position. I can argue the other position. And I've actually held really strong with the Christian side against an atheist. And they were real surprised to learn I wasn't a Christian at the end. They were like, wait a minute, you're not a Christian? No, I'm an atheist. I just like to have fun with it,
I mean, that's what I value about you, because you are willing to argue the other side, to better gain another, an understanding of, where, where the arguments are weak and where the arguments are strong, and I wish I could do that a little bit more myself, but it sort of sickens me whenever I try. It's sick to do it. So
it's weird, isn't it? It kind of is kind of weird, because I used to do it for fun, and I don't do it so much anymore because something about it makes me feel weird, because I know not truly what I feel in my heart. And so when I'm arguing something, but it doesn't, I know that it's not, and I know that I'm not obligated to argue for things that I truly feel like I have to believe. You're not obligated to do that in the sport of, if you're taking debating as a sport, right? And this can go along with politics. This can go with anything, not just the religious argument. And what that all tells me is that this topic is probably a little more serious to me than I think. The fact that one position sort of pulls at my heart lets you know that, you kind of do take it a little bit serious. Like for me, I used to go into it, like, let me put it this way. As you know, I used to be a Jehovah's Witness, and I used to be very into that religion, and I was very zealous and very committed and dedicated. But then when I got out, I became sort of like an angry atheist. And so I was always on the attack mode and on the debate mode. Then it got to the point where when I finally dealt with my issues, all that stuff kind of dissolved away. All that anger stuff kind of just naturally went away along with it. And then I realized, oh, it's not really even that big of a deal. It's like, it's not even that big of a deal. It doesn't exist. It's a mind game. It's all been a mind game. And I was just locked into it. And when I got comfortable with understanding that, then later on I began, getting good at, debating and having that discussion. And I felt like it's not a big deal. But then as I kept on, like you say, it just something sickens you about it. You feel kind of weird. I don't know what it is. I can't really put my finger on it. But I guess that sort of tells me psychologically that I want to speak my truth rather than just, debate for the sake of debating, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I went through a similar period where, when I first left Jehovah's Witnesses, and I was a very angry atheist. I went through a period where, I would, I was wanting to just, follow Jehovah's Witnesses round on the door-to-door work, and with plaques and things like that. But it doesn't it doesn't do anything. It doesn't discourage them. You just look like a moron.
Yeah.
And it's not really giving atheism a good a good
Right.
rep by doing stuff like that. And I know some apostates and stuff like that have gone quite, far in their anger, like, paintballing the side of Kingdom Halls and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it doesn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Doing stuff like that, and yeah, it's you can get a lot further by debating and having conversations with theists and actually getting down to the crux of the matter. Why is it you believe? What is your reasons behind things? And I mean, this doesn't just count for religion either. I'm planning a new show on the channel where we're going to be sort of rebuttaling and having a bit of humour and a laugh at the Ancient Alien series on TV,
Mm-hmm.
and doing that because it's quite powerful in the fact that it shows where arguments logically can go wrong. There are pitfalls you can fall into with logic. So on that show,
Right.
what they do is, when you watch it, is they'll say things like, is it possible that that ancient aliens were true? And they'll have like some really nice graphics and things like that, and about this argument that they're putting forward, like aliens under the ice of Antarctica or something. And they'll just ask at the end of presenting their evidence, which is weak evidence because they just leave out all of the the other possibilities it could be, and they just go to this one possibility and go, well, is it possible? And now the problem logically with something like that is when you're asking a question in that way, it seems like you're narrowing down the field
Mm-hmm.
of by asking, is it possible? But
Mm-hmm.
it leads people into thinking, well, yes, actually, it is possible. But once you've answered yes to it, then
Mm-hmm.
there's a whole load of new questions that arise, which all have the same question: is it possible? And the same answer: well, yes, because there's
Mm-hmm.
very few things that aren't possible that we know of.
Right.
But just because something's possible doesn't mean it's true, or there's a reason to believe it.
Or even
Um,
prop. Right.
exactly. So you've got to ask, um, Is A possible? Well, is not A possible?
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to do that. So is it possible? Yes, but is it probable? No. Is the opposite possible? Yes, the opposite's possible too. Right, we haven't got
Mm-hmm.
anywhere.
Right.
Why are we going to go down this route when the opposite of everything that you're saying is possible? And then you can put the same to religion, because you see this in a lot of arguments where theists will come forward and they'll go, well, is it possible? It's possible that God exists, using a philosophical argument like the Kalam cosmological argument. Well, it's possible God exists. Well, okay, yes, but is it also possible that he doesn't exist and it's just all naturalistic? Yes, that's
Mm-hmm.
possible too. Right. Well, let's just stop there, because we're not learning anything by going down this argument. You're always just going to come to an infinite regression of is it possible? Yes, and then opening up more and more questions down the line.
Absolutely. If it's something to be taken seriously, then you want to treat it with rigor. And if you
Yeah,
treat it with rigor, it's going to dig. You're going to dig and you're going to dig and you're going to find all kinds of possible problems eventually, almost certainly.
yeah,
And then that just opens up the doubt. Even for that doubt window, just opens up.
yeah. By the way, for anyone in the chat, if you are wanting to call in, we would love to hear from you. Right now, it's just me and Scott chatting. I love chatting with Scott, but then we could go for hours. But it would be nice to hear from some callers. So please consider clicking on that link and joining in.
Yeah. I discovered street epistemology a few years ago through Anthony Magnabosco,
Mm-hmm.
and I have the really fortunate situation of being friends with a street epistemologist who got really popular. His name is Tyrone,
All
out
right.
of he does the Let's Chat, and before COVID, he was just blowing up with his street epistemology. He's actually a scientist.
Oh, lovely.
Very, very smart kid. Very nice, very logical, and very easy to talk to. And he's been helping me like talk to people using street epistemology, and we've met, and he's kind of taught me different things, techniques for talking to people, and always reminding me you're not there to change people's mind, because you can't. Number one, the whole point is you want to get people to doubt, to question their most cherished beliefs.
Yeah.
And even you have cherished beliefs. You should question those. And,
Exactly.
you should really, like you should question, you should doubt, your stance on atheism or whatever. Like always, question things. It's healthy. It's fun. It'll help your mind expand into things and understand other people's perspectives. And that's really how we make the world better, is through, respectful conversation. And so while Ty doesn't engage in debates like I do, he does engage a lot in street epistemology. Like he'll set up his booth on the street with microphones, shoot the video, and he used to put up videos like every week. And now he hosts a radio show, the Digital Free Thought radio show out of Knoxville, Tennessee. And I am a guest on that show every Sunday. And we talk about, topics like that. But yeah, learning street epistemology is a good way to learn how to just have good conversations with people on anything. It doesn't have to be religion. And thank you, Kat. Kat says, you are good at talking to people, Scott. I hope so. I hope I am. I try to be positive, and and the funny thing is, like I said, I'm agnostic. I'm not very religious, but there are certain principles of certain religions. I don't know if you want to call Buddhism a religion or more of a philosophy. but there's certain aspects of Buddhism that I really resonate with, like the whole idea of the principle of not being. I can't even think of the word now. Shows you how studious I am with that, but attachment, the principle of attachment, not being attached to beliefs. I used to work with a Zen Buddhist some years ago, and we used to talk all the time about atheism, and he really dispelled a lot of my beliefs about Buddhism and things of that nature. And he used to talk about, meditation and sort of what I was going through at the time, dealing with a lot of things. And I said, yeah, but I don't really know if that's really going to work for me, because I don't really believe in a lot of supernatural stuff, And he was saying, well, look, in Zen Buddhism, we don't believe in supernatural stuff. We don't believe in gods and supernatural and things like that, And he started explaining to me different things and aspects and practices and things of that nature. He says, and it really opened my mind and it kind of like let a lot of that information in at that point, And it tended to help me during some trying times in my life. There was a point in time when I was under a lot of stress and personal issues and financial issues, and things were really falling apart. I mean, it got to the point where I actually attempted suicide one day.
Oh.
It was really bad. And I used to go through all this stress and anxiety, and I fainted at work one day, and I lost my job because I was under too much stress. They had to let me go. And it just made my situation worse. And, but talking to him, he kind of let me know, like the value of, letting go of things, meditation, focus on positive things, a lot of this positive minded stuff, but not really, kind of like just kind of like letting reality be, and, all this kind of stuff. And I started to really notice that, if I was to look at the world in a different lens, that it could change reality. And that's what he was saying. It's like, if you looked at the world as not this constricting place that's out to get you, even though it is, in some ways, in some, perspectives, the world is out to kill you, but if you can also look at the other side, that, you can also see wonder and beauty, and you can actually tap into something that's really positive daily and make that a daily practice and a daily habit, you can benefit from it, kind of like a placebo effect in scientific terms. And it worked. And I never had, when I started practicing that, I think I started one day, and a week later, I had no more anxiety. And I haven't looked back since, man. I haven't suffered from any anxiety, anything like that. And I started looking at the world and nature as more awe-inspiring and sort of divine in the naturalistic sense. And it's really helped me cope whenever I have problems. And I make it a daily habit still to this day. I look at the world a certain way. All that, you don't need gods. You don't need supernatural stuff. You don't need that. And that's what this Zen Buddhist priest taught me, So I see a lot of value in, certain, I guess, religious teachings or whatever. And it's all because of talking to people in a respectful way and trying to be open to each other, instead of just shut towards each other. I learned a lot from that.
Yeah, I think, obviously it's, horrible to hear that, you went through, that dark period, but, that you've learned so much from it is absolutely amazing. And I think we're all glad that you got past that, and, it's helped you a lot, to be the person that you are today. You're extremely intelligent, and you know what you know a lot to do with the logic and everything that makes you so good at what you're doing right now.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it. I don't even really view myself that way, but I just like to learn stuff and talk to people, and I think that's the key is valuing other human beings on the planet. I'm more of a humanist now, and it's like when you see the value that other people bring to the table, you can learn and you can grow from it. We're not an island, and that is what kind of determines who we are as we go through this journey that we call life, is that we're able to actually build on the things we come in contact with, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful way for me to look at life as just a wonderful journey. It's got its hard times, but if we can overcome them, these challenges, and we can lean on each other, that's what we're here for. If we can all have each other as friends and talk and build each other up, what a better world we have, and we don't have to get bogged down on all this negative stuff about arguing over, politics and the differences. There's so much in us that is in common with each other. We don't have to have these tribal differences to really make life terrible.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. It's it is a beautiful place. Where we live. Obviously, we, and we are, as a race, we're a beautiful race of people, and it sort of makes me sad that we can't seem to exist as one entity, as one human race, as it makes me very sad. It's one of the few things that can actually make me cry is thinking about the future and the hope that we can exist as as one race of people instead of segregating ourselves off all the time. I mean, obviously that doesn't mean that we need to give up our individuality. Obviously, we're all very diverse, very individual, but we don't need to keep fighting about who's right, who's wrong, who's we can we can work together to make the world a better place.
Yeah, we're a transcendent kind of species, man. I was just thinking that looking at human beings compared to other life forms on this planet, we're a very strange species of animal. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, what other animal gets inside metal boxes and rides down these streets with tires on them on rubber and creates these little devices that we talk into when we're talking to somebody across the world like we're doing now? I mean, what other animal does that? Like, we're really a strange sort of creature to begin with. I think that we take it for granted, but yeah, we've got really unique strengths and really unique weaknesses compared to other creatures on this planet. But the good thing about us out of all of that is that we're a transcendent sort of creature. We have this intelligence and this consciousness, that the self-awareness that allows us to actually observe ourselves and observe our thought processes and observe our observing of ourselves, which is really weird. It's kind of like a hall of mirrors, it like goes infinitely. We can keep looking at ourselves, but that's a really great, cool thing, because we can actually spot where we want to change and what works for us. And I think our morality, we've gotten better at morals, we've gotten better at progress, technology, along with all these other things. We still have limitations, like Christopher will tell you. It's hard to kind of talk about a lot of things with English. Like, math is much more rigorous and descriptive as a language, but we have like this old English language that we speak, and other languages that we speak on this planet, and they don't really capture the essence of a lot of things that we're trying to express. And but we have that ability to see that.
Sorry about that. I'm just trying to sort some technical issues out in the background. Yeah, continue on. Sorry.
Oh yeah, and yeah, that's just what it is. We're a part of nature, which kind of says something about the natural world. This universe is that is sort of chaotic and random as this universe seems to be, it gives rise to things like self-examination and introspection and ideals and things like love and positivity, these sort of judgments and sort of projections. It gives us that ability and that reality. So it's a really kind of weird thing. And it just shows you the ineffability, the ineffableness of the world, all of this is just beautiful stuff, man. And looking at ourselves, we can see it. And I know I sound like some crazy hippie from the 60s right now, but I think it's all true, though. I think that, if we look at life in this light, life becomes magical in a way. A natural world becomes sort of ineffable. I wouldn't want to say magical, but ineffable and wonderful and subjective, and all of that. And you don't need religion. You don't need, the divisions of religion and the separations that religion brings you and things of that nature. I think that what a lot of theists don't get about atheism and agnosticism and people that have kind of grown out of religion, they don't understand that there's a beautiful green grass on our side of the lawn too, And I think if we just understood that, if people would just understand each other like that, then we would come to respect each other a lot more.
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to solve some technical issues in the background because we tested the system that we're using for tonight the other night and it worked absolutely beautifully. And for some reason, it's not working the way it's meant to. Now we're live. It's always the way, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we're at that point in the world where our technology can sometimes frustrate the hell out of us. Instead of being a tool, it can be one of those tools that get the best of us, Yeah, believe me, I work in the IT world. Right now I'm working, or for the last year or so, I've been working in hospitals, supporting staff, hospital staff and work from home staff and people like that. And, the really great thing though, is that technology in response to this COVID outbreak has been a really superpower. It's helped people to maintain a living working from home safely. And our technology has really kind of sort of changed the dynamic of how these hospitals are now doing business. Like with some of the hospitals that I work with, just looking at just as a business standpoint, they've come to realize, wait a minute, with these people working from home, we're saving money on rent, we're saving money on electricity, we're saving money on this and that, whatever. Why do we need to be doing, things the old fashioned way? It seems like we've kind of jump started into a whole new paradigm of work from home and support. So the hospitals have learned that it's doable, and they've managed to just make this a permanent thing. Even after COVID's over, they're like, we don't really want people to come to the office anymore because we can now reserve that space for other things or not even use it and save a lot of money and still be more productive, actually more productive. That was the what we were told. Like, I'm a contractor, so we were told that this is sort of a long-term thing now. It's just not a COVID response. It could be a thing where everybody's stuff is just in a room, in a server room, and everybody's logs into their devices and network VPN style and, do their work and stuff that way. So technology is really a tool, but man, being someone who supports them, it can also be a headache.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff you gotta It sounds good on paper, but there's a lot to it too, though.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I think for tonight we're just going to have to just continue the conversation between me and you because the technical issues, I can't seem to work them out. Sorry if anyone's tried clicking the link. We're not sure whether the issue's on our end or whether the issue is on the side of OBS Ninja. Yeah, because it's not working the same as it did when we were doing the test runs for some reason. So yeah. Do we want to continue on talking, or do we want to wrap it up for the night? And
yeah, if we can't get any callers, we might want to wrap it up.
I think we can still get callers, but I'd have to put in. I'd have to control the room. The mod doesn't. The issue is the mod doesn't seem to have control.
Oh, okay.
Well,
that's bad.
Yeah, it was working fine in the tests, but then thing. I mean, if anyone wants to call, if no one calls, we'll wrap up in say 10 minutes at the hour. Sure. If anyone does want to call in, I will post this link. 2 secs. Yeah, I'll post this link here, which will bring you directly into the room. So feel free to click the new link if you do want to ask a question.
Yeah.
I think we had a question from Kat. Kat the Humanist. Do you have any arguments for how the diversity of this planet makes it an even more amazing place because it is naturalism?
Yeah, I love that question because, again, it points to the the amazing reality that we find ourselves in. We're in this wonderful ecosystem, and we've got all this diversity of life. In fact, I was speaking to someone today, an atheist, and they were sort of talking about consciousness and naturalism. And so he was expressing that he was sort of talking to I think an idealist or someone about rocks and plants, or maybe not or panpsychist, rather, panpsychism. And he was talking about arguing with this person that rocks and plants and stuff are not conscious, only humans are conscious. And so he was asking me, my opinion on the whole matter. And, of course, the thing that makes life so amazing is that we're conscious of it, for one thing. But the thing about that is I don't even know how to know other humans have consciousness, since consciousness is by nature subjective. Mm-hmm. And so I can only infer reasonably that humans have consciousness by their behaviors. So, for example, we're kind of told that people, while they're in like a coma for, say, a long period of time, these people come back out of their comas like after months, saying that they were conscious and no one really knew it. Like they could reference conversations that were verified, stuff like that. So while behaviors are really correlated reasonably, lack of certain behaviors don't really prove the absence of a conscious experience. So we know like slime molds, plants, amoeba, other simple life forms have behaviors that correlate to what we would consider conscious. Yet, like a pea zombie, right? Like a philosophical zombie can act conscious and report an experience and not be. Kind of like a computer, right?
Yeah.
So it's tricky. So if one's going to use behaviors as a determining factor, then plants and other things may reasonably be considered conscious in some form. But then we know that, that's not necessarily true either. We just don't know. But regardless, the fact that there's you may say that there's intelligence separate from consciousness. And so you can definitely see intelligence in nature, like plants and amoeba and things that react to their environment and are able to kind of, like a ant colony seems to be sort of intelligent in the way that it forages for food and stuff like that. Now, at a small level, the ant is not all that intelligent at all. It's just doing one little job going, but it's reacting to these little pheromones or whatever, these little scents, and it's foraging for food on its own individually. But as they crowd together, it seems like the thing is working intelligently. So in a way, our brains, like the collection of our neurons in our brains, may be similar in that way. And so as an emergent property from these little fundamental ways that things work, we can see intelligence coming out of that. And with humans, at least we know consciousness comes out of that, which is a whole other ballgame. So yeah, so if you value intelligence and you think that that's really cool, I think that emergence, metaphysical emergence, is a really cool thing. I think it's really awesome the way that works. And it's so kind of unexplainable because no one really understands how that works, but it does. It's observed in everything, But it's one of the things that makes, for me anyways, nature really awesome,
Yeah, and and it's a big question right now, isn't it? How, what is consciousness? Whether obviously theists would say, well, consciousness is the soul. It's the our true selves outside of our bodies, and obviously my skepticism. I'm not convinced by that answer.
Right.
I think there's just a different level of consciousness that you can have, depending on your evolution. I think we have a caller actually. Hello. Oh, no, they've popped back out.
No.
Oh, that might have been Skids working in the background, actually. He did say ignore him. He's testing something. Yeah, so consciousness, it's an interesting phenomena. But I think we can explain it naturalistically quite well. And unless a better answer we come across a better answer that makes more sense, then we've got to go with what is more likely. Everything in my mind, as far as knowledge goes, works on probability. What is the most probable answer? And I don't think in any in any argument that it's supernatural is the more likely answer for anything.
I don't even know what that means.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, first you've got to define it, and then if you're defining it and you don't have any proof to prove the definition, then you're just literally defining things into existence.
Yeah, circular.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing about that is for a long time, I haven't bought into that dichotomy. I think there's just reality. It's kind of like, again, my Zen Buddhist friend said, there's only reality. There's not, it's man's imagination that likes to divide things up into little siphons, this category is supernatural, or this category is natural, and this thing is that, and this thing is this. And there's just one reality. There's just a reality, and we observe it. And what was once considered supernatural is just part of the natural world. It's like, one thing that I was watching was Sean Carroll. He's got a podcast called Mindscape, and he had a guest on that was discussing modern metaphysics, which is really, from what the guest was saying, which is really just the same metaphysics that the ancient Greeks used to talk about, the natural world. It's just that metaphysics got sort of hijacked by, the religious Christians and people like that, Muslims, Islamic, different religions, Abrahamic religions, sort of hijack metaphysics to talk about God, their metaphysics. And it became more popular to talk about metaphysics in a framework of religion. Yeah. So this guy was talking about modern metaphysics, which is, basically ontologies, and really they're just questions that the whole hope in it is that science will be able to deal with it. And it's no longer metaphysics, that it's now just physics. And so one of the things he was mentioning was like one of the metaphysical questions back in the day, and a lot of scientists didn't like it. A lot of materialistic philosophers didn't like this, was that there was this idea that the universe fundamentally wasn't made of things, but made of probability fields, like quantum fields, quantum field theory. And the materialists just hated that idea. It's like, no, you're actually, now what you're doing is you're kind of like trying to smuggle in your metaphysics into reality, and it doesn't work. That's not how it works. You can't just say, things aren't things. This doesn't even, it's like even a contradiction of terms. Like, you can't say that. But as it turns out, now we know that they were right. But what the the guy that he had on the show was saying that, and as what they did is, at first they rejected, even after the theories and everything were proven, there were many, if not most, scientists went to their death denying it, despite that, just because it was too spooky for them. It was just too, for whatever reason, it was too weird. So, and I think one scientist coined the term that, the paradigm of physics changes when old physicists die out. It means they're going to hold on to these old beliefs until they die, because they just can't accept certain things, because it sort of goes against the old paradigm, that they've gotten used to and that they find a career in. But what they did is they just simply incorporated quantum field theory into materialism. So now the quantum field is part of materialism. So now if a religious person were to argue quantum field theory to kind of like prove the supernatural, then they'd say, no, that doesn't work, because quantum field theory is just part of materialism. It's part of our paradigm. So they just simply adopted it, right? And if someone understands this history, an argument could be made to say that, no, actually there is supernatural. It's just that you guys sort of hijacked it and called it your own, which is not really under the strict definition of materialism, because material was always called a thing. Like atoms were supposed to be these little hard objects. This whole thing about probability, these aren't things. Probabilities are just like mathematical coordinates, right?
Yeah.
So it created and that was the whole reason to begin with, that quantum field theory was not accepted by the consensus of physicists back then. But then it eventually did. So what that teaches me, it doesn't mean that the supernatural is real. To me, it just means that we're kind of like playing with labels, like it's all just word games. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's reality,
you've got to be very careful not to fall into that trap, don't you? Of just defining things and then going, well, it exists because now I've defined it. It's that's why with philosophy you need to come in with an open mind. You're asking questions to try and learn something that new, to generate new questions, to then have something to then try and test empirically to work out whether or not it's actually real.
Right.
But religious scholars and that don't seem to do this. They come in with the assumption that what they believe is true.
Right, right. That's the problem. And
Yeah.
see, the thing about that is, and this is why that whole thing didn't work, as the guy was mentioning in the show, was that even if you were to grant quantum field theory to the religious people, it still doesn't prove God. It still doesn't get you to where they're trying to get you to, and that's the whole point. And that's why it really wasn't a good idea for science and the materialists to be kicking back so much. It's almost like they were accepting the premise. They were buying into the labels and the problems and the projections that the religious side was already giving them. So instead of just dismissing the premise, they accepted the premise and then wanted to just force their view on reality. And that's not how science works. Science doesn't care what you believe. Either way, on either side of the game, mind you. So it's the same thing that happened with Einstein. He mentioned, another metaphysical idea that was out even before Einstein. It was a metaphysical idea, was that this notion that time was a thing. Like time wasn't just this, construction of the mind, but actually time itself was this thing that could be bendable and physical and all of that. And, philosophers at the time said, no, that can't work, because that's kind of a contradiction. It's like time is,
I think
something
we have
else.
a caller, by the way. Hello?
Yes. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. How are you tonight?
I'm doing fine. I've never used OBS before, so sorry about the lack of image.
It's okay. We're not streaming images out anyway. It's just me and Scott on screen. But obviously everyone can hear you. So,
Okay.
did you have a question or a topic?
Well, I was just scrolling through YouTube, seeing who was live, and I came across this stream, so I decided, hey, this sounds interesting. I saw that one of you, or maybe both of you, is an ex-Jehovah Witness.
Yes, we're both ex-Jehovah's Witnesses.
Okay. I had a Jehovah Witness just recently, maybe 3-4 weeks ago, give me a little pamphlet. And she said this. She said, well, what did she say exactly? Something about this will prove to you that God is real, or something of that nature. And I was like, oh, okay. Mentally rolling my eyes, but whatever. And then I read it, and it was literally circular reasoning. It would show Bible verses to prove that the Bible is real. I took a picture of it. I have it on my phone somewhere. I should have looked for it before I started on here, but we won't worry with it. But it just really blew my mind, because I know there are a lot of Christians out there and religious people out there who do have arguments. Granted, I think all the ones I've heard, at least, are terrible, but this one was just like, wow. So
Well,
the God of the Bible, because the Bible says the God is real.
The Bible's all true, sir. It even says so right there in the Bible.
Right. So I was flabbergasted, really. I just couldn't get over it. I thought, wow, this is absolutely the worst pamphlet as far as trying to prove God I've ever seen. And I've seen some that are at least a little bit better than what that was. Some will at least try to use philosophy and still fail, but at least they're attempting. So I just wanted to mention that. And if you guys need me to leave or anything, I don't have a problem with that. I just want to throw that out there.
No, we're quite happy to have a conversation about this. Obviously, both me and Scott, we were, being Jehovah's Witnesses, we were people who had to regrettably go about giving those pamphlets out to people and, arguing for the existence of Jehovah. But they do have it's very circular reasoning, and you're just taught to produce Bible verses and cross-reference those verses with other verses. You're taught to make it sound good, make it sound legit. But
Right.
You've got to also remember as well with Jehovah's Witnesses, it's like it's a very high level cult. So it's the cult indoctrination is very strong from a very young age. A lot of those Jehovah's Witnesses have been in since birth. So sometimes obviously they're talking bullshit, but they actually believe the bullshit. A lot of them. So.
Oh yeah. I know they truly believe it. For me, I came from a Pentecostal Assemblies of God, really strong fundamentalist family. Even homeschooled. Like they homeschooled me and my siblings our entire lives. And our entire education and curriculum was all based on the Bible and God and Christianity in general. I joke around, I say my math book actually was religious too, because it said if Jesus has 5 fingers on one hand and he has 5 fingers on the other hand, then how many fingers does Jesus have? I mean, essentially, that was almost, it's close to being accurate. I put it to you that way. It's close to not being a joke.
Yeah. Jehovah's Witnesses, you'll see in that pamphlet, they'll be talking a lot about, I guess it was 1 Timothy 3:16 or 2 Timothy 3:16. All scripture is inspired of God and beneficial for teaching, reproving. And, that's the go-to scripture. Like if someone was to ask, but why should we believe the Bible's true? Oh, right. It says right here in 2 Timothy 3:16, all scripture is inspired of God. So therefore, it's like, it doesn't really do anything, if you're a critical thinking person.
Right. Exactly. Because, like I said, I've heard some religious people put out some arguments that at least had a little bit of weight to them, which obviously isn't a whole lot, but at least they tried. But on this pamphlet,
what got you out? What got you out of Christianity?
It was a gradual process. I think the first thing that really started to make me look at the Bible a bit more skeptical was when I realized that hell there's 4 different words in Greek and in Hebrew. Collectively 4 different words that they all translate into one word, hell. And each word has a very different meaning. Yet, granted, not all Bibles make this mistake, but a good portion of them still do to some degree. And I thought, wait a second, why would God allow His infallible word to be translated in a way that's so messy? And I know hell is just a tip of the iceberg. If you listen to Bart Ehrman or the rest of them who actually study it, it's like that's nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that really made me. That's when my gears started to turn, and then I would watch atheist videos, and they'd say, "Look, it shows here in the Bible that you can beat your slave, but you just can't kill him." And I was thinking, that's not in the Bible. The Bible's all about love. Even though I grew up almost eating the Bible, I never really thought about, wow, there are some really screwed up passages in the Bible. Like that one prophet was bald-headed, and the kids are making fun of him, and so he curses them, and God sends a wild animal to eat them. And again, I'm thinking, there's no way that's actually in the Bible. That's just some atheist talking, out of his ass because he hates God. That's what I was thinking. That's what I was pretty much taught to think, or taught how to think. And but then as I started to read the Bible, it really, like with fresh eyes, with this eye of, hey, maybe some of this is questionable. And it just made me realize there's just no way an all-perfect, all-loving, omnipresent God is real, or at least not the God of the Bible, because the Bible God or the Abrahamic God, he is a maniac. And so I kind of became what I would call agnostic light, which is what I would define as I kind of believe in God, but I'm not really sure. And then from there, I turned into an atheist. And then from atheist to pretty much anti-theist. Like, it's not just enough for me not to believe in God. I want others to not believe in God too, because I think it's better for society as a whole.
Yeah.
So, one of the theories that I have is that I think the more fundamentalist Christian you are, the more easier it is. Now, this sounds kind of unintuitive, but I'll tell you why I believe this. But first, the thing that I'm theorizing is that the more fundamentalist you are as a Christian, the easier it will be for you to leave Christianity. And the reason I say that is because usually fundamentalists have this whole thing of the Bible's either true or it's not. It's very binary. It's
Right.
very it's either all in or all out. Like, it's got to be perfect. It's all infallible word of God.
Yep.
But if you're like one of these, fake flag waving Christians, right?
Right.
You're going to be these liberal, weak-kneed Christians. You're going to be very, oh, well, you can interpret it. Maybe I was just wrong in the way I was interpreting it. Actually, God didn't mean this. He meant that. Way of making it all nice and airy-fairy. Right.
Cherry picking, basically.
Yeah, very, very exactly. And even for the scriptures you don't like, a liberal Christian can just simply say, oh, well, that part of the Bible, that's not true. That was just ancient man's take on it.
Right.
The part about love and the part about giving to the poor, this is the part that's real. And those people will always find an excuse to stay in Christianity, because they'll always be able to reinterpret and post hoc rationalize stuff away. Whereas like a fundamentalist like yourself and like me and Katie, we're more like, it's either all true or it's all bullshit.
Right.
All it takes is one little weak chain in the link to break, and then the rest of it just falls like a house of cards,
Well, yeah, I absolutely agree, because it's funny. I've thought about making like a little video essay on this particular topic, about how at least fundamentalists are being consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Like, granted, it's to a fault, and they are. I mean, you can't help but laugh at them. But at least they're being consistent. Whereas liberal Christians, nothing wrong with. I'm not dissing the liberal ideology, but the liberal Christian, the idea of, well, some of it's good, some of it's, it's not what it really means. That kills me, because that just shows you don't really have a foundation. You're. It's like you're going to a buffet of scriptures and religion, and you're saying, okay, I want some of this. Oh, I don't want none of that though, but I will take some of this over here, some of this over there. But I don't want this over here. Something about stoning gay people. No, we don't want that. That was never in the Bible. And that mentality really, even though I would rather be in a world full of Christians who are like that, at the same time, ironically, it does piss me off, because it's like you're not being logically consistent. Like that cognitive dissonance probably bugs me more than most things.
I think you're onto something, and I think too that part of the reason you're able to leave is because you didn't know so much about, like you mentioned, the slavery, the things that you didn't even know in the Bible. Now the problem is, like, especially from the world me and Katie come from, is that Jehovah's Witnesses own that stuff 100%. Like, you'll be surprised. Like, they talk about slavery in the Bible. Like, I used to read about it, and I never winked an eye about it, because the way that they presented it was like, slaves, and this was what happened with Hebrews, and they just kind of glossed over it, but it was like accepted, and everybody just had to accept that's what it was. Like, and no one really questioned it, which is really odd. I didn't start questioning this until other things started coming along. And then it was like a secondary afterthought. Wait a minute. Yeah, we were talking about slavery. Why did I never see that was all fun?
Right.
One of the things that we learned as Jehovah's Witnesses was about the story of Jephthah. Now, Jephthah, in the book of Judges, he was a guy who was a warrior, and he went to war, and he asked Jehovah, he said, look, if you will give these people into my hand, I will sacrifice the first
Oh
person
yeah.
I see coming back.
Yeah. Mhm.
And he sacrificed his own daughter in the fire and produced her as a burnt offering to Jehovah.
Yep.
And all of that to us was just taught. See, the lesson here is, always honor Jehovah, always honor the
Be faithful.
promise, and Jehovah will always bless you and be true to his promise. And so we're like, yeah, great story. But it never really registers with us that's kind of fucked up, though.
Yeah, because when you with heavy indoctrination, it's it's building up those blinkers, isn't it? It's putting those blinkers on, and so there's two different routes within Christianity. You can either just teach an alternate interpretation of why these horrible things are actually decent things, or you can just throw them out altogether.
And just own it.
Yeah.
Well,
It happens, so like that's how fucked up Jehovah's Witnesses are. They'll just like, yeah, it happened. So what's the problem again?
I think probably how I would describe it is you watch a mystery movie, right? Who done it? And then by the time you realize, by the time the twist comes and you realize who did it, you think to yourself, oh, I had no idea. But then you go back and you watch the movie and you say, wait a second, I didn't know. Like, there was clues all throughout it. That's kind of how I feel about the Bible. Like, when you're a Christian and you hear about slavery and, stone non-virgin women on their wedding nights, it doesn't really, for most people, at least if you're a kid, it doesn't really click. And they just skim over it. Like, they always bring out, like you alluded to, a good moral message of a sick, terrible story. But then once you actually think about it, it's like, wait a second, this is some BS. Like, and this God is all loving and all powerful. It would be one thing if he was just all loving and not all powerful. Then it's like, okay, well, he can't do anything about it. But let me tell you, if do y'all mind me chatting a little bit more?
No, it's absolutely fine. Go ahead.
Okay, because I don't want to take over or anything. If I overstay my welcome, just say, hey, you got to get out of here.
We're happy to chat.
One thing I have started to ask Christians is this. Okay, most Christians believe that when a baby dies, the baby goes straight to heaven. And most, though not all, Christians are pro-life. They are against abortion 99% of cases. So I'll say, okay, well, if the odds of going to hell are great by being born and living past the age of accountability, whatever the hell that is, then doesn't it logically follow that by killing the baby or aborting the fetus, you guarantee that they will spend an eternity in heaven, as opposed to risking their soul's eternal destination? And oh boy, they do not like that question. They like this one guy. He's probably made like 3 videos on me now. Keeps saying, no, you're just saying you want to kill babies. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm saying. Like, how do you?
Better one. This better is what you're talking about. It actually goes back to the problem of evil. So if you think about, like, if you look at the words of Jesus, right? He says, narrow, like this was beat in our heads as Jehovah's Witnesses. Narrow is the doorway into salvation, right? And then wide is the path to destruction. So the odds are that most people are going to be destroyed. And for most Christians, this means hellfire, right?
Right.
Eternal conscious torment for most people. So it seems like it'd be unethical to even have a baby. It seems like the odds are against your child making it to heaven. And it seems like it's more probable that they're going to spend the eternity of their existence in hell, simply because they were born. And then this kind of raises the other question: well, then that kind of puts the onus on God himself, because why would God create anything if his knowledge is perfect and he knows everything perfectly? Then obviously he knew that most of his creation were going to suffer in hell forever. And if that's the case, it would be more ethical for God to have not created anything. If that's the only possibility for free will to exist, is that some people are, or most people are going to choose to go to hell, then why create anything at all? It seems like that's unethical on God's part. You know,
it makes God a moral monster. There was an argument given by a philosopher about that. You know, which you know, it doesn't matter what you look at as far as God's attributes. You know, either he's able to do something but unwilling to do something, or he's willing to do something and unable to do something. So
well,
yeah, go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You go ahead.
No, that was just, basically the point I was trying to make is that, either God's not all powerful, or God's a moral monster, and the majority of religions out there say he's all powerful. So
on top of all loving.
Which is just an illogical contradiction.
Well, then it's kind of, and it's funny because that's actually another argument I've used is God knows whenever a soul is born, God knows where that soul is going to end up when that soul dies. So when a soul dies and goes to hell, he knew that soul was going to go to hell before that soul was even a sperm. Yet God made these lost souls, quote unquote, anyway. So that makes him worse than, I would say, if you think about it, that's even worse than Hitler. Because like Hitler, yes, he was terrible. Can't say enough bad things about him. But with God, not only does he make you suffer in life, or excuse me, as some people say, allow you to suffer in life, but he will cast you into a lake of never-ending torment after you die. And he knew he was going to do that before he even started the universe, according to Christianity.
Yeah, he knew everything. So it's like, you can look at it in legal terms. Like, suppose you're a scientist and you run a privately owned lab somewhere downtown. And in your lab, you've actually created these robots that are conscious and have free will. You created them. Big breakthrough for you. But let's say they broke out of your lab, and they went into town and started murdering everybody. Would that scientist be held responsible for his machines that went out and fucking hurt people and killed people? I think so.
I've used that same analogy. That's so funny. I agree, because, like, let's say there was a man and he invented a robot. Before he laid the first wire to the robot, he knew this robot was going to go out and kill people. Yet he made the robot anyway. Like, that is obvious. Like, sure, he didn't literally kill them by his own hand, but he did create something that he knew was going to kill somebody or multiple people.
Correct.
Christians hate those questions, though.
Oh, they hate him. They also hate the one about Jesus being tempted by the devil. Like, if Jesus is God and he owns everything, then how did Satan tempt him to begin with? Like,
Like,
break into your house and you worship me, or I'm gonna if you worship me, I'll let you watch your own TV in your own house. Like, really?
And it's even worse because, for example, I don't understand how Christians get so emotional and teary-eyed over the sentence, God gave his only begotten son. Because it's like, assuming the story is true, which it's not, but let's just assume, Jesus knew he wasn't actually going to die. He was just going to walk around the afterlife for a couple of days and come back to life. Like nothing ever happened, but what a sacrifice that was. It's kind of like, it's like if somebody was coming to kill you, I would say, okay, listen, I'm going to take a 3-day vacation for you so that this person won't kill you. It's like, well, that's nice and all, but it's not really a sacrifice.
Right.
Like, and if you know if I'm going to choose you or deny you before you even do any of this, then what's the point? Like, why even make me to begin with if you knew I was going to hear this story and think it was BS?
A lot of plot holes, man.
Yeah, right. That would be a good title for a book. Christianity, plot holes or something like that.
And it gets even more lame if you're one of these, if you hear one of these Christians who believe in the Trinity, because then he's not sending down his son; he's just sending down one part of himself, one attribute of himself, and sacrificing that. But then it still exists afterwards as part of God still. So it's like, okay,
right?
What have you sacrificed?
It's funny because I know one time I said, which I'm sure you've heard this before, God sent himself to kill himself to save us from himself.
That's
and
right.
This one guy was like, no, that's not right. And also God's a Trinity. So I said, okay, let me correct it. God sent a part of himself to kill a part of himself to save us from a part of himself. Is that better?
Oh, yeah, exactly. What they really hate is if these people feel like Jesus is God and God is Jesus equally and all this stuff, then every time I start talking about Noah's flood and drowning babies, I always refer to Jehovah or the Father as Jesus. Like when Jesus sent the flood to Noah, he killed all those babies, and then they're like, no, Jesus didn't do that. Like, wait a minute. Yeah, he did.
Right. Yeah, it's like, well, y'all, you believe he's one and still three, but also one. Like, yeah. Speaking of Noah's flood, it's funny as I pretty much became what I said earlier, agnostic light, where I kind of believed in God, but I wasn't really sure. Like, I went from like 100% Christianity to like 50% to now like negative 100.
Right.
I remember being in church with my girlfriend at the time, and we went to go pick up her friend's kid from what do they call it? Where they keep the kids while church is going, children's church.
Yeah.
And I remember looking, and this is when it really hit me, looking at all the paintings on the wall for these children. It was Noah and the Ark and the two cute little tigers and lions and bears all over the wall. And then it hit me, wait a second. Y'all think this is appropriate for kids? This is like one of the most horrendous story in the Bible about God killing literally every single man, woman, pregnant woman, child, disabled person in a flood except for a small family. Like,
yeah.
Like how is this appropriate?
Man. Oh, it's crazy. It's a never ending, like, if you look at the whole Bible, the whole story, like if you look at it as a big long story, and you just see God is just this inept, manager of the universe. Like he's always having to complain about his shit. He creates shit he's not satisfied with. He has to repent that he created man on the face of the earth. He feels sorry that he created anything. And he has to start over and over and over again. He destroys the world in a flood. That's not it. Then he's got to destroy like Sodom and Gomorrah. He's got to do all this destroying because he keeps fucking up and he keeps repeating just a comedy of errors.
But he's all perfect and all powerful.
Yeah, it makes lots of sense.
Well, so were you guys Jehovah's Witnesses like from day one, like as children, or?
Not me. I came in later. I studied a lot with like Church of Christ and like born again sort of churches, and did little youth leadership and stuff like that. And then I spoke. Then I kind of drifted off of that as a young man, and Jehovah's Witnesses got with me and set me straight on some of the Trinity stuff and problems. And then I fell into that probably around the age of 21, 22, and stayed with it until I was about 25 or 26. And then I got out of that shit.
Yeah. I was born in, left when I was 18. So luckily I had didn't put too much time into it.
Are there any beliefs that y'all used to hold that you used to find comfort in, and that's like the one downfall you don't have anymore?
Well, there's the obvious one, which is, like, what happens after death. I mean,
Yeah,
I think anyone who's
absolutely.
religious would, that's a big reason to believe is, that it brings you hope that if, you lose loved ones, you'll see them again. And, once you die, you'll be resurrected or you'll go to heaven or something like that. Obviously, that's a big one, but I've now come to value since leaving. I've now come to value the short time that we have on this planet, and I think it's very
Yeah,
important
absolutely.
to finding meaning in life. Is having that time period where you know that you've only got that short amount of time, and you've got to use that time wisely to better humanity in some way.
Yeah, that's right. It's kind of the same for me too. When I finally left all the religions alone, I was kind of sad for a long time because I felt like,
Same.
wow, yeah, well, sad, like just remorseful. Like I felt like, where am I going to go? Like
Hmm.
now there's no afterlife or any hope for an afterlife, and there's no God, and there's this and that. And I became very angry because on the one hand, I was angry that I was lied to about so many different things.
Hmm.
That's what got me out. I felt like I started seeing reality differently and understanding reality differently, but it left me with this hope. And I was like, if they just never introduced this shit to me from the beginning, I wouldn't
Hmm.
be sad right now. I
Yeah,
wouldn't be like,
exactly.
but it took me a while to wean off of it. And now I'm like, I look at death like it's inevitable, but it's nothing to be scared of for myself.
Right.
But I will admit, like, if one of my children were to die or something like that, it would kill me. Like,
Yeah.
I know that they're gone forever. They'll never exist again. And that's sad because I have to live in this world with the knowledge that they're gone. Their little personalities are gone, their little things they did for me and that I
Right.
did for them, and our relationship is gone forever. It's just a memory right now. And that's sad. But for me personally, I'm more sad to see other people I care for die than myself. If I die, I feel like all my problems are kind of over at that point.
Yeah. Well, I agree with both of you. You're exactly right. For me, it's funny when when I realized that I truly could no longer believe in God, where I was completely incapable of believing in God, just in the same way I'm incapable of believing in Krishna or the Easter Bunny.
Mm-hmm.
It hit me. I thought, wow, where am I? Like, Germania, where are you gonna go when you die? And I thought, I'm going nowhere. My body is going back to the earth, and my consciousness will be out. And that was really scary for me, because, like you said, if you were never introduced to this thought, you wouldn't have cared. You just be like, yeah, you live, you die. That's just the way it goes. But when your whole life is based on this hope of not only going to eternal bliss, but also seeing your dead loved ones and all the ones you've met along the way, that you'll eventually see them again. That was really hard on me. It was really crushing. But at the same time, there's many pros to it, but this is one of the big pros. For me, I was completely terrified of hell.
Mm.
I mean, I remember a beautiful, bright, sunny day. I think it was a Saturday, and I could not enjoy lunch on that Saturday because I was so worried that I would go to hell. I actually had a condition called, which this wasn't diagnosed at the time. I recently learned of this condition, and I realized that's exactly what I had. It's called scrupulosity. I can't
Scrupulosity.
remember. Yeah, I can't remember how to spell it, but when they described it and what people and the things people deal with when they have scrupulosity, I thought, holy hell, that was exactly 110% what I had. It's like extreme religious OCD. You are literally afraid that you're not being as perfect as God requires you to be. So you're pretty much effed if you mess up in anything.
I went through it too. I got diagnosed with it too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I even did a whole show on scrupulosity on the other digital free thought radio. Scrupulosity is not a joke, man. I used to worry about just thinking bad thoughts, like if I saw an opposite sex and had bad thoughts about or bad thoughts or whatever. Well, then I felt like, oh shit, God is gonna fucking kill me, punish me forever. And even if, and the thing about that was, even if like I would go to the elders in my congregation, and I would try to seek encouragement, and they'd say, look, Jesus, you're saved by Jesus, and Jehovah knows that, and you're covered by the ransom sacrifice, and you don't have to worry about the judgment. God knows you're a sinner, this and that. But actually, that just shows that you're serious about pleasing Jehovah. So they actually used that against me and made me a ministerial servant, like a leader in the church, because they felt like you're a good example. This is what more people should be like you, worried about.
Right, more people should be terrified.
Yeah, it's like,
and then that just adds to the problems, because now they've just given you more responsibility, which is just going to fuel the whole problem that led to that.
Look, exactly. And they used to beat that scripture into our heads as ministerial servants and elders was, more responsibility means you have more accountability. Like better that you not be a teacher at all than try to be a shepherd and then fall short on your duties because Jehovah's watching you. And that used to bother the shit out of me, man. And even after I left, that shit used to kind of stick with me, man. It's like the habits of just worried about my thoughts and worried about whether I said something wrong or whatever. And it's like I had to go seek help. And they told me that the only way you can get out of it is you have to just force yourself to willingly, let the thought play out. Look at someone of the opposite sex and just let that thought play itself out. Embrace it.
I'll send you an email to this because I don't want to be a sleazeball and shamelessly plug my stuff, but I have something talking about this very thing where I was I was with my dad. I was probably 13 at the time. And I remember we were at the grocery store at the checkout line, and I was looking at all the magazines, just looking at them, not opening them up, just looking at the covers and seeing all the half beautiful naked women on the cover. And like clockwork, I felt damned and dirty. And then I would whisper under my breath, Jesus, forgive me of my sins. And I would have to repeat that over and over until I felt like I got it right. And then I would be doing it mere moments later. And then when I started to learn about things you can do with yourself, self-gratification, sexual self-gratification things. I'm trying to say it in a way that you won't get demonetized if y'all are monetized. I realized, wow, I'm definitely not going to make it to heaven. And that was just terrifying. But I will say this, thankfully, I don't have any of that baggage. Once I realized I can no longer believe in God, especially the God of Christianity, all that fear went away. Occasionally, I'll have a dream where I become a Christian again, and that terrifies me when I have that dream. But 99.99% of the time, I haven't had any like PTSD type stuff, which I would imagine many Christians do have that. But thankfully, I don't know. Maybe it's just my brain is like it's a safety mechanism. It's like, okay, girl, you don't believe this. Let's just don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe on a subconscious level, I don't know. I'm just grateful that I don't struggle with it at all.
Oh, It's
Well,
terrible.
we're absolutely thrilled to hear that. It's that you're not suffering with that anymore, because trauma's terrible. I mean, we've all suffered trauma here in one way or another, and it's a terrible affliction to have to deal with the anxiety that causes. And a lot of trauma has religion to blame for it. A lot of the time, it
Yep.
seems, and it's
You know,
something we all need to fight against. And
I was mentioning a person I used to work with, which was a Zen Buddhist, and he used to always tell me, because we used to talk about this kind of stuff too,
Mm.
and he used to say, Buddhists, Zen Buddhists, we kind of feel sorry for Christians because you guys
I bet.
believe afterlife stuff and souls. Like, they believe in anatta, which is no self, no soul, like no afterlife. Like, they believe that, basically, it's all an illusion in a way.
Right.
Which kind of, they say, they're proud to say it adds up to what modern science also kind of tells us, that, that basically the self is kind of is just a thought about a reflection. It's basically just, it's kind of a narrative. So in actuality, you never really exist to begin with. So you don't have to worry about not existing, because you really don't exist anyways. You're just an experience. And
Yeah,
the only thing that really carries on is karma.
trippy.
And what the Zen Buddhists, how they define karma, is not like how the Westerners, define it. Karma is just like cause and effect. It basically means, like, after you die, if you treated people like shit and hurt them, well, even after you die, you still fuck them over. They're still dealing with your shit, or the positive stuff too.
Right.
So it's kind of like a pebble in the ocean. It just, the ripples go, and so your energy and your actions or whatever have a ripple effect in the world. And that's kind of what humanists and a lot of atheists believe too, is that we know that our life is short, and so we just have this small window of time to be a good force in the world, to do good things and try to make a better world. And the Zen Buddhists kind of feel the same way. That's why they're atheists too.
Right.
And they say we're just kind of like atheists with a psychological bent, or a more humanist type of outlook is the only difference. So it's one of those religions, I guess, that's more in line with what we believe.
It's more rational, for sure.
Yeah, very rational. Yeah. And it helps you. It helps you deal with attachments to beliefs and detaching from fears of afterlife.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to start wrapping up now. So, thank you very much for calling in, Gramania. That's been, it's been a lovely conversation. If you want to call back in again, feel free. We do this every week. Would love chatting with you. So, thank you very much for calling in.
Oh yeah, thank y'all for having me. Y'all have a good one.
Yeah,
you too, man. Mm-hmm.
All right then. So I'm going to start wrapping up, because over on the Tart Show, Oz has got telling his story. He's got an interview with Pastor Mike. So
Nice.
I'm going to let the viewers get going so they can jump over there.
Cool. Sounds great, man.
Thank you very much for everyone who's been in the chat. It's been lovely speaking with you all. Thank you very much, Scott, for helping me out once again, co-hosting. It's been brilliant. If you want to, if it's your first time here, please like, share, and subscribe. That would mean a lot. And also, if you want to support the channel, check out www.borgskeptic.co.uk. That's where you'll find links to my Patreon, my Discord, and my merch store as well. I'm actually setting up a new merch store using Printful right now, so I'll let you know when that's set up, and I'll have some new gear to sell there as well. As I said at the beginning, I'm now working with Devoutly Secular TV, which is a new Roku channel that we're setting up. So if any of you have a smart TV and would like to watch a new atheist or secular, secular TV channel with some content from numerous different content creators from across YouTube, then please check out Devoutly Secular when we've got that set up. I'm going to finish off by saying, as always, please remember, ignorance is never bliss. Stay safe, stay home, and wear a mask. Thank you and good night.
Good night, guys.
Galleys with the stink of decay, stamped down under boots of the company. Slave spirit, propagate and obey. Trust up in the hog ties of industry. Live to produce and produce to consume. It's all you know now. Suffering none as you breathe in the fumes. Still here they go, selling you the sky and the stars. Always gotta push it too far. Ain't no profit in my pride. You can't put a price on me. Selling you the sky and the stars. Revenue is all that you are. Ain't no profit in my pride. You can't put a price on living free. A little touch of hope, a little touch of hope goes a long way, spreading color as we glide upon the grace. A little touch of hope, a little touch of hope goes a long way. Time to hack away your shackles, claim your dues, yeah, it's payday. Get the pick of the pond. Little minnows are crushed into caviar. Great beckons with the perks of the cone. Bad scamper in the smoke of a fat cigar. Live to produce and produce to consume. Feed the supply now. Suffering none as you breathe in the fumes. Believe the lies, selling you the sky and the stars. Always gotta push it too far. Ain't no profit in my pride. You can't put a price on me. Selling you the sky and the stars. Revenue is all that you are. Ain't no profit in my pride. You can't put a price on living free. A little touch of hope, a little touch of hope goes a long way, spreading color as we glide upon the grace. A little touch of hope, a little touch of hope goes a long way. Turn to hack away your shackles, claim your dues, yeah.